Let's dive right into an unsettling pattern that repeats itself throughout human history. It's like this invisible shadow that follows us everywhere. We see it in our own families, our closest friendships, workplaces, politics, right up to the rise and fall of nations. In this explainer, we're going to explore a deeply profound, almost eerie psychological mystery: how human connection, seemingly inexplicably, transforms into conflict. Just picture two people who genuinely care about each other. They start out with the best of intentions, mutual trust, shared goals, but then suddenly, almost without warning, they find themselves standing on an emotional battlefield. The whole atmosphere just shifts. Words that were meant to communicate become sharpened weapons. In pride, it hardens into this impenetrable armor. Silence isn't peaceful anymore. It's a tool for punishment. That warm connection is just gone, replaced by a cold, competitive drive to win. Looking at that kind of destruction, you naturally have to ask, why do intelligent people destroy the connections they care about the most? The easy assumption is that it happens because human beings are just inherently selfish, aggressive, or maybe stubbornly ignorant. But modern human psychology reveals a much darker, invisible truth hiding beneath every single argument we have. Most conflicts don't actually start because people want to inflict pain. They start because people are desperately trying to protect something deeply hidden within themselves. And that brings us to our first psychological trap. We call it the illusion of shared reality. We walk through life falsely assuming that everyone experiences the world exactly the same way we do. But here's the thing: perception isn't a clear window. It's a dense, invisible filter. Before a single conscious thought even forms in your mind, your brain is already aggressively filtering everything around you through your past wounds, your current emotions, and your absolute deepest fears. This invisible filtering perfectly explains why two people can witness the exact same objective event, say a simple conversation in the kitchen, a meeting at work, or even an entire shared childhood, and somehow arrive at entirely different, fiercely defended realities. You aren't actually reacting to the event itself, you're reacting to your highly personalized, emotionally filtered interpretation of it. And the truly unsettling part? We rarely realize this is even happening. We just assume our interpretation is the absolute, undeniable truth. So because we don't experience reality directly, it creates this, frankly, terrifying dynamic in our relationships. Think about it. When someone challenges your perspective, it doesn't just feel like a simple, polite disagreement over the facts. Deep in your nervous system, it feels like they're denying reality itself. It feels like a fundamental threat to your sanity. This is exactly why conversations escalate into confrontations so rapidly. Both people genuinely believe they're the ones defending the objective truth, and both feel completely, utterly misunderstood by the other. Which brings us to an absolutely crucial, invisible force in human behavior: the ego. Now, when we talk about the ego in psychology, we aren't just talking about arrogance or vanity. Not at all. It's the core psychological structure that creates your very sense of self. It's that inner voice answering the ultimate question of who you believe you are, what groups you belong to, and what your values are. And the real danger? That begins the moment we attach our opinions to this fragile structure of identity. Just take a look at the anatomy of a triggered reaction mapped out here. It reveals exactly why incredibly intelligent, rational people become surprisingly emotional and sometimes downright irrational in everyday debates. That tightening in your chest, that sudden flash of anger, they aren't happening because the information is dangerous. They happen because, at that moment, the conversation is no longer about evidence. It's literally become a matter of psychological survival. It is entirely about protecting their certainty and their very selfhood. Notice the terrifyingly fast sequence of this emotional takeover. It's like a chain reaction. Someone makes a totally harmless comment, but through that filter of perception we talked about, it gets perceived as a criticism. The ego then translates that criticism into a profound sense of rejection, which snowballs instantly into intense psychological pain. This happens in a fraction of a second. A minor inconvenience triggers these ancient survival systems, and suddenly you're fighting as if your life depends on it. To really understand why this happens so fast, we have to look at our evolutionary hardware. Our emotional systems were literally designed to detect deadly threats instantly in incredibly dangerous prehistoric environments. Because, if you hesitated back then, you died. This means the reactive, emotional part of your brain fires instantly. So by the time your slow, logical, rational brain actually arrives at a modern-day argument over who should wash the dishes, your anger is already completely uncontrolled. You are analyzing the entire situation through a lens of pure hostility. Once this emotional storm hits, we really have to step back and ask, what is truly happening beneath the surface here? I'm sure you've experienced this. You get into an explosive argument about something just incredibly trivial, like chores or scheduling or the tone of a two-sentence email. On the surface, it looks like a practical debate, but underneath, there's a hidden psychological battle taking place completely in the dark. Because these are the real stakes of most human conflicts. Beneath the surface, we are fighting a deeply rooted evolutionary battle for status. For our ancestors, social standing meant access to resources, which meant survival. And the crazy thing is, we are still hypersensitive to any signal that implies we're being disrespected, dismissed, or undervalued. When those raw nerves are touched, the reaction is absolute dynamite. And this right here exposes the tragic disconnect at the very heart of human relationships. We fight over the visible, surface behavior, completely missing the vulnerable truth hiding underneath. Look at this translation. A person expressing intense anger is often just expressing deep, unarticulated emotional pain. The person fiercely demanding respect is desperately pleading to feel valued. We miss these secret fears and pleas for worth, and instead we just attack the hostile behavior, pushing each other further and further away. Now, this invisible emotional fragility has always existed within the human mind. But as this timeline shows, the environment we live in today has drastically changed. For most of history, an argument eventually just faded away, naturally limited by geography and time. Today, however, our absolute deepest psychological vulnerabilities have been weaponized on a scale we have literally never seen before. A localized misunderstanding can now travel globally within seconds, dragging thousands of people right into the fray. Look at the cold mechanics of the modern internet. Social media algorithms, they do not care about objective truth. They don't care about emotional nuance or deep understanding. They are systematically designed to reward and amplify our most destructive psychological vulnerabilities. Conflict captures attention. Anger drives engagement. And so, the digital ecosystem feeds on this performative outrage, turning our private emotional fragility into a massive public spectacle. This digital conflict engine exposes our deep-seated evolutionary desire to belong to a side. The internet didn't create the tribe, but it forced us into an environment where every opinion is a public performance, and every single argument is essentially an audition for that tribe. We flatten each other into these simplified, easily hateable caricatures. We lose all nuance because, let's face it, nuance doesn't signal loyalty to the group. Outrage does. As we fall deeper into this psychological descent, we really must confront an unsettling paradox, the ultimate human contradiction. The exact same complex brain capable of profound, breathtaking empathy, love, and understanding is equally capable of cold division and tearing society apart. The hardware is identical. The systems designed to keep us alive and connected are the very same systems currently generating so much suffering. It is honestly the bitterest of ironies. Our desperate craving for connection and acceptance is exactly what drives our tribalism. Our need to belong to a group creates fierce hostility toward anyone outside of it. In our frantic attempt to find our people and feel safe, we actively create intense conflict with the very humans we ultimately share this world with. But if we strip away the internet algorithms, the evolutionary ego, the tribalism, and the fear, what's actually left? Beneath the heavy armor of anger, insecurity, and defensiveness, victory is rarely what human beings actually desire when they engage in an argument. What we truly want is profoundly simple. We just want to be seen, to be heard, to feel that our reality, our pain, and our experience actually matters to someone else. Knowing all this, we really have to look back at the wreckage of our personal and societal arguments and ask this question. Humanity's greatest conflicts rarely begin with inherent, mustache-twirling cruelty. They begin with a simple, quiet misunderstanding that was just left to grow in the dark, an emotion that wasn't validated, which hardened into resentment, an identity that felt threatened, constructing a story that each side believed completely, shutting out the rest of the world. When you finally see the invisible forces of perception, ego, status, and fear at play in every argument, a profound shift happens. You realize that the person shouting at you or the person you're shutting out is often just a vulnerable mind, desperately trying to feel understood in the dark. We are all trapped inside our own filtered realities. And perhaps the first step to true connection isn't winning the argument, but realizing there's a terrified human being standing on the other side of it. So the next time you find yourself gearing up for an emotional battle, ask yourself, what is the hidden, fragile story they are so desperately trying to protect? And what is yours?